Hello and welcome to Oddspedia Premier League Match Day 16. We do have a title race. This is so interesting. Man City only 2 points behind Arsenal. Aston Villa 3 points behind Arsenal because we saw a great football game at Villa Park. Tom Rennie, hello.
We did, and it was one of the few times this season Arsenal win to 0 has not come off. But don't worry, that bet is coming back today.
Well, and we are going to mention Mohamed Salah. I think it's worth a talk in this show. So stay with us, guys. A lot to comment in this Premier League video, Match Day 16. Remember to leave your comments. We have a Tyne and Wear derby in the north of England. Really, really interesting. So, of course, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And we start with a tricky one, really, really interesting. Chelsea-Everton, since we saw Chelsea losing again in the Champions League against Atalanta. Probably they deserved a draw, but they started really bad the game, and they lost again, having a lot of problems away from home, 4 winless games since they beat Barcelona and drew. Then with Arsenal, both games at home, but then very poor against Bournemouth, against Leeds, in Bergamo, less poor, but again, a bad result with 𝐬𝐭𝐴, Tom, scoring goals. And here we have Everton, 4 wins in the last 5, really close to the European spots.
Yeah, though I would say in terms of the table, we're getting bogged down in the table, all of us at the moment. It's so cramped between Crystal Palace in 4th and Newcastle in 12th. There's like 4 points between those clubs. So the table is now getting spread. I'd still give it another 10 weeks before we really start looking at the table, because everyone's beating everyone at the moment in the Premier League. It's making it very difficult to predict. Even Villa are beating Arsenal, and Everton are suddenly going on a winning run, and Leeds are winning games. It's really tough right now to predict this league, though we try our best. In terms of Chelsea, what's really fascinating about them this season is that away from home, they're fantastic. I think they're the 2nd or 3rd best team in the Premier League this season away from home. But at Stamford Bridge, they're really struggling to win. I think it's 3 wins and 3 defeats and a couple of draws across the campaign. And that's what's really surprising to me, because maybe they're missing a little bit of guile in this team. Maybe they're missing a creative force, an Odegaard or Eze type or something like that to find the right through ball. But I don't know if that is true, because Enzo Fernandez can do it, and I feel like Neto can do it, and I feel like there's a load of players there who have the ability, but for whatever reason, they are struggling to break teams down at home, which makes Everton at home quite a horrible fixture for reasons we'll get onto in a minute. It's also worth noting, too, that 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜 𝐿𝐿𝐴 is going to be unavailable, and that's a huge loss for Chelsea, as we saw in the previous game. No Caicedo, and they struggle. That idiotic red card he picked up against Liverpool not only cost them in that game against Arsenal, forgive me, they could have gone on to win that, but it's cost them in the next game and the next game, and this game it will cost them as well. Romeo Lavia is unavailable because he just does not have the body to play top-level football. That's a real shame. I don't take any pleasure in saying that, but he doesn't have it. And so a midfield of makeshift Reece James, great player though he is, he's not Moises Caicedo. You add that to Enzo, and then another player, whomever that might be. They just aren't the same team. And it means Reece James goes out the back line. The back line has struggled all season for Chelsea. I think maybe it's about time we give up on the Tosin experiment at Chelsea. And maybe Enzo Maresca just needs to pick his best defence, his best team, and play it and play it and play it and play it. And losing 𝗛𝗏 as well to injury, which he picks up trying to be a battering ram instead of a footballer, is a significant problem too, because the plan was, and has always been, João Pedro and 𝗛𝗏 as a pair. We've barely been able to see that this season. So issues there for Chelsea. In terms of Everton, really impressive, I think, this little run of form. Though I wasn't that impressed by it until Forest last week. That's changed my mind on just how good this Everton team are, because they have a great manager in David Moyes, who is more than capable of going on a run in the Premier League. He doesn't change the team very much. He has to get forced into changing that team. And when he picks the team and plays it and plays it and plays it and plays it, it's this sort of time of year where you start to reap rewards from that if you have good players. And we're seeing a consistently good run of form from Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. We're seeing a return to form for Jack Grealish. We saw our first Premier League goal for Barry up front. We're seeing rewards from players playing themselves into form by being on the field. So it's a tricky one, this. And I wouldn't discount an Everton win at 5.6, right? So first and foremost, those odds are crazy considering that Everton have won 3 away games and Chelsea have lost 3 home games. So do not discount the Everton win here. If you're looking for a punt this weekend to throw a tenner onto, it may well be this. If not, go the Chelsea win, but go tight, tight, tight. There are not many goals in general in games involving these two teams. Lots of 1-0s, lots of 1-1s, lots of 2-1s, really tight fixture. So if you go for the Chelsea win, 1.71 is no good. Chelsea win by exactly 1 goal is 3.5. Anything over W money is always something I'll look at. Really like that one. Also, Chelsea win under 2.5 goals in the match, 3.75. Otherwise, go for the straight up Everton victory for really, really good odds. But under. Tough game, this one. I would say Chelsea might just shade it.
I can't see many goals here, David. Man Spaghetti asking you, Tom, Maresca is in danger?
No, nowhere near danger. Maresca will be in charge all season, and I wouldn't be stunned to see him there next season as well.
Next one, also a tough one, Liverpool-Brighton. Liverpool, massive favorites, 1.7, although, of course, their home form, well, the Premier League form is really, really poor. Draw with Leeds and with Sunderland. And we all remember also the defeat against Nottingham Forest, but it was a massive bounce back against Inter, winning in the last minute. That dodgy penalty scored by 𝐬𝐴, of course, everything after the words said by Salah in Elland Road. Perhaps this is a boost for the team. The club backed Arne Slot. Tom, perhaps the group are now much more together and they can improve in the next weeks with Salah probably out of the team, also going to the Africa Cup of Nations. And be careful also with this game because Brighton could be dangerous. They are only 2 points away from the European spots, even if they drew with West Ham and lost to Aston Villa in the last 2 games.
Yeah, and I think they would have deserved to lose to West Ham last week as well. If it wasn't for a really bad refereeing decision, they would have lost that game 1-0. So there are some concerns about Brighton at the moment. In terms of Liverpool, let's address Salah first. He was rightly dropped for playing poorly. The manager has to make those decisions, and he wasn't playing well enough, and he got dropped. This is not some great big conspiracy about Mo Salah and the club forcing him out and all that sort of stuff. It was Mo Salah offering absolutely nothing on the field for 10 to 12 weeks, and the manager's deciding, look, we've got to change something here. And it wasn't the fact that he didn't just change Salah and nothing else. He's changed Robertson and 𝐿𝐭𝐻𝐿. He's changed the makeup midfield at times. He's picked Isak or 𝗵𝗵𝗍. 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐧𝐧𝐸 is now at right back, and he's changed loads of things. So it's not like it's the exact same team, but he changed Salah over for someone else. So that's kind of silly, really. It suggests to me that Mo Salah had this pre-planned. It suggests to me that Mo Salah has got his out plan to go to Saudi Arabia, which is about to come to fruition, I suspect, because I think this was a burn the boat interview that he did at Leeds last weekend. And I'd be surprised if Arne Slot gave him his big goodbye against Brighton this weekend, which he would have got, I think, if he didn't give that really self-indulgent press conference last week. If he decided I'm going to Saudi in January and I'm going to AFCON next week, he'd have started this game and got a big cop send-off. Instead, he didn't want that. He wanted to act like a ridiculous, petulant child. And here we are, sadly, the end of an era for Mo Salah. I don't think he plays for Liverpool again. And that leaves a team who, I don't know if they look more together. I think maybe they look a little bit more workmanlike without Salah because it gives them a bit more energy in midfield going backwards. It's allowed Curtis Jones to come in. It's allowed 𝗵𝗡𝗍 to return to a natural position in a more offensive role as opposed to sort of right back where he's been filling in for a lot of this season. I still think there's huge doubts about 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐧𝐸 Konaté at centre-half. Without his incompetence, they'd have beaten Leeds quite comfortably last weekend, but it was almost like he was a secret agent for Leeds. How many times he was making errors to get Leeds back in the game, and they can't replace him because there is no depth in central defence for Liverpool. It was the big mistake of the summer. Didn't need this many attacking players, didn't need 𝗵𝗵𝗍 and Isak, didn't need all of it. They needed someone to play alongside Virgil van Dijk or some cover for Konaté if he fell off a cliff form-wise, and they don't have it. And that's ongoing issue there. In terms of Brighton, as we mentioned, I think they've been poor last couple of weeks. They were very poor last week against West Ham, and it was a real Nuno trap in lots of ways. Super, ultra, mega low block, hit them on the counter, and it should have worked for West Ham, but for a late goal that should have been disallowed for two different reasons, one high boot and one handball. And the concern is that none of the offensive players are really having great seasons beyond Welbeck. I would say 𝗵𝗍𝗄 is as well, actually. I take that back. But the other guys being Minte and Mitoma. Mitoma's barely been fit. Minte again last week did almost nothing. Rutter's goal last week, I think, was his first of the season. Offensively, they are struggling, though they are a very solid team with 𝗵𝗍𝗄 and 𝐿𝐴ZZ𝐧𝐞𝐜 and Ayari in midfield, depending on the combination of those players. Plus, they picked up some decent results on the road this season, 2 wins, 2 draws. So it's a tricky fixture, no doubt about it. And if Brighton score first, I think that they could potentially win this game. So Brighton at 4.72, considering the recent form, is well worth it, considering Liverpool have struggled against Brighton-like teams in recent weeks. I think they're a step up on Nottingham Forest, but Forest at their best may be at a similar sort of level. So Brighton at 4.72, irresistible. Draw at 4.32, really nice. Liverpool to win is no good. I wouldn't bet on that on its own. If they do win, it's going to be both teams to score because Liverpool are conceding goals right now in the Premier League. It's 24 goals conceded this season in the Premier League, home and away. For comparison, Arsenal have conceded 9, Man City have conceded 16. The problem isn't necessarily Salah and the offense. It's the defense that have been woeful this season for Liverpool. And if they don't fix that in January, they won't make the top 4.
Well, no player is bigger than a club. Indeed, Nabil, you cannot say that you have to play because you were very good. Then this is no football. Salah versus Carragher, very, very spicy indeed. Carragher was furious about Mo Salah. I think, of course, he was right. And we should check, I think, smart bet for this game and see what the tool is telling us. And he's going for 𝐿2, actually, for the double chance for Brighton.
Yeah.
Odds are 2.2 on or an under 3.5 goals, 1.6. So perhaps we see a surprise. Who knows? This is a tricky game for Liverpool. Then we have Burnley, Fulham here for the relegation spots. Fulham are only 4 points away from the bottom 3, so they need to get something from Turf Moor. They lost the last 2 games at home to Palace and Man City. But Burnley, Tom, now they are 5 points from salvation. They look absolutely dead. It's 6 defeats in a row.
Yeah, look, Burnley don't have a Premier League squad and they will go down this season. I've said that from the first week and I've seen nothing so far to change my mind. I think they've got a lot of players who are more than good enough for the Championship and not good enough for the Premier League. Foster, Broja, Cullen, 1 or 2 others. 𝗛𝗏 was great last season, no good in the Premier League. And they haven't done what Sunderland have done. They have done what most teams do. They've tried their best to recruit, but they couldn't bring them in. And I think they're a fairly traditional, newly promoted side, and they've struggled. At home as well, they've struggled. And that's where you're going to stay up in the Premier League. Being able to win your home games. 2 wins from 7 is not good enough for any team trying to survive in the Premier League. All the teams in the bottom 5 have struggled to win home games. They don't score many goals. They're not particularly sound defensively. But they do give you a game. I mean, look, the one thing I'll say about Burnley is they're not a Southampton or Ipswich from last season who were horrendous. They are a team that are absolutely well coached. And they're giving it their all, but this is not a give it your all league. It's who's got the most quality league, and it's not been Burnley for any game this season. It could be here though. Like I wouldn't discount the prospect of victory for Burnley because Fulham are the team that everyone's looking at. Fulham are the team that Leeds are looking at. Fulham are the team that West Ham are looking at. Fulham are the team that Nottingham Forest are looking at, and they'll be the team that Burnley are looking at as well because there is something off about Fulham. Really good win against Spurs a couple of weeks ago. Decent fight back against Man City, but defeat, and then lost to Palace last weekend. Bassey's been nowhere near good enough this season compared to his quality last season. I think no Anthony Robinson all season's been a problem. This will be the last game they've got Alex Iwobi as he goes off to AFCON. He's their best player, I think, and playing him deeper has been effective, but it does mean they've been more exposed defensively. Got a few little moments out of 𝐿𝐿 and Smith Rowe, but I don't think they're consistent enough. Jimenez up front is the only striker because Rodrigo Muniz is out, and Wilson scores spectacular goals. And that's a fantastic trait to have. Does he have the consistency to add 10 assists to 10 goals? It's a high bar, but that's what Fulham need. At the moment, I think he'd fall below that metric. So an interesting game this. Fulham have struggled away from home as well, but I am going to bet on Burnley to lose pretty much every week this season, and I see no reason to change that tack here. Take the Fulham win at 2. I do think there'll be goals at both ends because defenses aren't particularly good here. So Fulham and both teams to score is 4. And then always pick out a form player in a game like this. And Harry Wilson, as we mentioned, scored that 𝗀𝗏𝗏 last week. He's a fantastic finisher. Wilson, anytime goal scorer, is the player I pick out in this one, 3.6.
Okay, Burnley won actually against weak teams this year. Yeah, but perhaps not as weak as Fulham. Fulham usually don't do as good against weaker teams. I bet 1x true. Yeah, they usually do better when they play big rivals. Well, then, good luck, Tom, finding good bets in Arsenal Wolves. We just did Bayern Munich Mainz, for instance, in the Bundesliga. Here is the same. First, against last in the table, -25 is the goal difference now for Wolves, going towards the record of the worst team in the Premier League history. Arsenal, I guess, Tom, some doubts since they couldn't beat Man City, Villa, or Liverpool. But if they win in the Champions League, they win here, they would bounce back and regain confidence, regain players, and so on.
Yeah, look, it's a great game to have after a wobbly run, to have the worst team in the country, maybe one of the worst Premier League teams ever at home. And look, there are players out for Arsenal. I do think it's significant to have lost 𝐿𝐴 with Saliba and Gabriel both out. Maybe Saliba will come back this week, next week, in the near future, but Gabriel we don't know about. So to go into a game with 𝗵𝐿𝐴 and Timber or White at centre half, look, these are good players, but they aren't title-winning players, and that's the issue in terms of this season. You know, not as good as Gabriel and Saliba, right? Let's simplify. So look, I think there are concerns there defensively if they were playing someone of note, but they aren't. So I think Arsenal will go reasonably strong at the start. I think Merino continues up front because he is their best striker. He's better than 𝐿𝐴. I'll tell you right now. If they're going to win the league this season, I would build the attack around Mikel Merino. He's the best forward for this team, this really functional team. And it's function over style this season. And 𝐿𝐴 just ain't doing it. Just ain't doing it regularly. Can't stay fit. Struggling at the moment. And Merino looks a better bet. So it'll be probably Saka, Merino, and Eze up front if it were me. And you've got Trossard, been a fantastic option this season. Martinelli's been a good option this season. Loads going forward here. Obviously, you go for an Arsenal win. And just really briefly on Wolves, their worst run in the league since 1981. That was their worst run ever of 9 straight league defeats. They just have really poor players. It's a really poorly constructed squad. I've no idea why Rob Edwards came into this scenario. The midfield, as I've said countless times on this show, is too slow. It's too laboured. It's too lazy. And there's no combination of players that can improve that. They have not got any power in midfield. Defensively, error-prone players who aren't good enough for this competition. And Johnson or Sarr, the goalkeeper, is terrible. And Stratton Arsenal, who wanted to go in the summer, just cutting a miserable figure up front and not doing much at in front of goal. So, look, how many are Arsenal going to win by? If you bet on this game, obviously Arsenal win 1.6. Take it. As ever, Arsenal win to 0, 1.67. I can't see Wolves scoring a goal. Decent little group bet here of 1-0, 2-0, or 3-0. 2.25, still not really good enough for me. You want at least to double your money. First double your money solo scoreline is 3-0. I can really see this being 3-0 to Arsenal, scoring 2, getting a bit laboured, bringing on the subs and adding a late third. Minus 2.5 handicap, 2.5. So look for at least 2. First time you make any money is 3-0. And then take your pick. I mean, it depends on how many people Arteta rests, but look at Saka. He's the man that usually scores for Arsenal. Throw that in as well. You're going to need to, but at least 3 goals to make some money.
Well, indeed, check the lineup before handicapping this one. Mam Spaghetti is telling us, and I would agree. Patrick saying that Wolves are terrible. And of course, we all agree. Only 2 points is really, really bad. And another tricky game. We might see surprises, I think, this weekend in the Premier League. Tough games for the top teams, apart from Arsenal, of course, and I'm talking about Crystal Palace, Man City in Selhurst Park. Man City, after playing at the Bernabeu in the Premier League, is 3 consecutive wins since they lost at St James's Park against Sunderland. It was not flashy, but they controlled the game and they scored really good goals. Of course, we all like the Rabona by 𝗀𝗀𝗀, but Crystal Palace are in Champions League spots. They won the last 2 away games, even in the defeat against Man United. They deserve much more in the first half. So this is a tough one, Tom, for the citizens.
It is. The only concern really is that Palace are significantly better away from home. I think they're the best team in the country away from home in terms of victories. At home, they have missed 𝐬𝐭𝐴 this season. They have missed an element of controlling games this season. And as games have gone on at home, when they've become more defensive, they have struggled, as we saw against Manchester United. But look, they're a very good team. I mean, not much changes with Crystal Palace really in the last 18 months. And that's a very positive thing. Danny Munoz being out is significant because I think he's their most important player. So to not have him potentially in this game is significant. I think it might be a couple of weeks until he's ready. We'll see. I can only go from what Oliver Glasner has said in recent days. So Nathaniel Klein having to play there, look, perfectly fine backup in many ways, but huge drop-off from Munoz. And when you lose that, this Palace team tend to lose a bit of balance. Though I have been impressed by 𝐷𝗫𝐿𝐴 coming in for 𝐿𝐴 in an unfamiliar position he doesn't really want to play in. But look, little chinks are starting to show now in Crystal Palace, and I wonder how long they go on this incredible run for if more and more players sort of drop out of the system. Hopefully it goes on forever, but we'll see. Home form has been a problem. The good news for them is they can play like the away team in this game because City, even in their current guys, are being a bit more physical and direct, are going to have 60 to 70% of the ball here. Tough to assess City. The goals are certainly there, right? And lots of players are scoring now. Foden's in good form. You mentioned 𝗀𝗀𝗀's great assist last week. Haaland's scoring. Doku's looking good again. O'Reilly and Nunez getting forward. Got lots of good players bombing forward. The trouble is defensively, they're continuing to struggle. Donnarumma, I thought, had a terrible game a couple of weeks ago against Fulham. Didn't look particularly convincing against Sunderland either. I think he's a very good goalkeeper, but there's a rick in Donnarumma, and there always has been, and they're coming to the fore at the moment. So he needs to refocus and improve on his performances in recent weeks. So there are ways to score on Man City. Lots of teams, bar Sunderland, in recent days have shown it, and I wouldn't be surprised if both teams scored in this game. Palace, though they've struggled at home, have won, I think, once, but they've drawn 4. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the draw here as a top tip. 4 draw between these two. Really tantalizing prospect here. If you pick a winner, go for City and keep it tight. Man City on its own is 1.91. Look for City in exactly 1 goal and City in under 3.5 goals in the game. And then you've got to look at individual players. Haaland anytime, Foden anytime, Foden goal and assist. You will make some money doubling that up with a scoreline. If you look at the Palace lineup, you've always got 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 𝗀𝗏𝗏, who's been phenomenal again this season in front of goal. 7 in the Premier League, not to be sniffed at.
City to win for Arifnero. Nurdin going for Crystal Palace to win and over 1.5 goals. Let's check what Smart Bet is telling us in this great game at Selhurst Park. Total goals under 3.5 goals. This is 1.5, and then is the dodgy double chance that I would not take, 1 or 2. Why not a draw in this case? But yeah, the AI is not seeing a draw at Selhurst Park. Then let's go to Forest Tottenham. Really good odds if you fancy Forest or if you fancy Spurs finally winning at home. They did it against Brentford. They did it against Slavia Prague. Yes, Tom, you said it in our Champions League video, by the way. Congratulations. Also, your 𝐿𝐴CCA came in, and we saw Xavi Simons scoring in both games, really important. And Nottingham Forest, Tom, lost to Everton 3-0. Is only 2 wins at home. And again, they should win some games here to avoid the danger zone in the table.
This is one of many really horrible games this weekend that are really tough to predict.
Oh, tough, huh?
Real tough, because I think Forest are better than their current league position, and I still feel very confident that Forest are going to survive in the Premier League this season. I think they've got good enough players. I think Sean Dyche is a more than adequate manager, and I think they will survive. But then they throw in a game like Everton last week where they were horrendous. Really, really awful performance. Created nothing, defensively weak, made loads of errors. Milenkovic was awful. And then going forward, they don't have the Hudson-Odoi Elanga combo of last season. And Amari Hutchinson and Odoi are not as good as the players they have replaced. And we are seeing that at times this season. Two pivotal positions in what Forest did try and do and are trying to do again. So fascinating. I think the home form's obviously been awful because they don't create many chances. They hang in games and try and nick a winner in a 𝗙𝗏𝗄𝐿 way. And there's every chance they do that here. And I do like 𝐜𝐭𝐴𝐳𝐳𝐽 up front. I think he's been a good asset to Nottingham Forest, though penny with the thoughts of Chris Wood, who's gone from competing for the Golden Boot to being unable to get a single minute of football. I wonder what his future is in January and whether a reuniting with Nuno in East London might be on the cards. We'll see how that goes when the window opens in 3 weeks from now. But home form's been poor. Chance creation not been particularly good. But if you score the first goal as Nottingham Forest, the opposition could be in serious trouble. I think this game is all about who scores that first goal. In terms of Tottenham, away form's always been good this season. They have picked up some really, really good away victories. Been really impressive in big games, in small games. Just one defeat on the road. A Thomas Frank team is always tough to break down, though I have been surprised by just how good they've been away from home. And I think as well, again, we don't know about the injuries or knocks from the Champions League as we record this. Easy win against Slavia Prague, though it was. But I think playing Archie Gray in midfield made a big difference. He's given them something different that hasn't been there with Sarr and Bentancur and Palhinha. He's given them drive. He's given them tenacity, youth, and a bit of energy, which has been missing. That's allowed Simons to flourish. That's allowed Kudus and 𝗀𝗏𝗿𝗲 or whomever else on the wings to have a bit more time and space. He's doing a bit more of their work for them. Plus, he's doing the running Palhinha can't do. So that's been a really significant change, I think, for Spurs. And Gray has been trying to get in this team for a couple of years and has mainly done it in a kind of cover defender kind of way, which is not what he is. I think he's a good up and down central midfielder. So I think that's made a difference to Spurs. And if he is fit here, I think he could nullify with Palhinha the Anderson Sangare 1-2 that Forest have, leading you to look at the creative players and whether they can make a difference. And Spurs have better creative players than Forest. So for me, you've got to go for a Tottenham win at a really generous 2.9, considering they've only won 2 home games this season and Spurs have won 4 away, I think. So really nice, but it's going to be real tight. Tottenham by exactly 4.5. Really, really good odds that for what I think is going to be a tight game. If you're going for Forest, doing the exact same combination of things, the win and the exactly 1. And in terms of individuals here, for Spurs, look at Mo Kudus. I think he is an incredibly inconsistent player, but when he's in a run of form, he's always worth backing. And 2 goals and 5 assists this season, pretty impressive. So to score or assist Mo Kudus, decent odds as well.
Both things to score for Nurdin, and hello to Viper. Viper, you are welcome. He's thanking us for our tips. And work Tom, Tyne and Wear Derby, Sunderland, Newcastle back to the Premier League. We saw it in the FA Cup and Newcastle smashed Black Cats, but now it's a different story. We see even Sunderland above of the table. They have 1 point more than Newcastle. They are having a really tough schedule, but still against Man City, okay, they lost, but they were coming with a point from Anfield, and Newcastle now in a good run, beating Burnley, beating Everton. How do you see this game? What is the atmosphere there? Have you ever been to this kind of derby?
I've not been to this derby. I've been to lots of North London derbies and Chelsea West Ham games and Manchester derbies and loads of big derbies. But by all accounts, this is the one that certainly in the northeast of England, everyone looks forward to. It's the first one in some years in the top flight. And the atmosphere at Sunderland this season has been incredible, absolutely incredible, because like when you've done well, even when you concede a goal, the atmosphere doesn't immediately get like, oh no, here we go again. There's still a positivity about the place, a belief about the place. And that's what Sunderland have right now. And they continue to ride the crest of that wave. Though it is worth noting, it's the final game before the AFCON moment that Sunderland have been really afraid of this season. They're about to lose half their team to AFCON. And depending on how the individual nations get on, it could be a few weeks. So luckily for them, they've got plenty of points, plenty of buffer. But I think this might well be a moment that we see Sunderland start to lose a few more games than maybe we'd seen so far. But 6 wins, 23 points, 10-12 away from safety. Absolutely no danger of relegation. But it is worth noting, if you're going to play Sunderland, this might be the time you want it, as opposed to in those opening weeks of the season. But before all that, they've been tremendous. Traore's looking good. 𝗛𝗏𝗏 and Xhaka, what a great partnership. The back three is working well. Roof's been very, very good. His distribution to the subs when they come on has been fantastic. And the atmosphere here is going to be just wild, absolutely wild. And they've got 4 home wins this season. Nothing particularly significant, though, in the teams they have beaten at home. They've beaten teams that have struggled, and the big teams they've given a game, but they haven't really been amazing in those sort of home games. You know, draw against Arsenal, yeah, okay, fine, but didn't win those games is the point I'm making here. So if you're going to bet, maybe don't bet on the Sunderland win if you consider Newcastle to be a big team. That's the question, though, isn't it? Are Newcastle a big team? We're heading towards like a third of the season gone, and they're still in the bottom half. They're struggling to get out of that bottom half. They are struggling to get in the conversation of Champions League and what have you. They're struggling with the midweek weekend, as so many teams do. He's tried to fix that recently, Eddie Howe, in midfield rotation. So it's 𝗵𝐵𝗏 getting 45, Miley getting 45, Willock getting a start, and Joelinton coming on, because in games like West Ham away and Brentford away, when they've tried to play their first choice 3 midweek and weekend, they've struggled. They just can't get through it because of the work rate required in those positions to play the Eddie Howe way. So really interesting to see what the lineup is here. If Newcastle get that team right with the right freshness, I think they will go on to win. But I've got to bet on form here, and I've got to go for a Newcastle 2.35 is not good enough. Sunderland 3.54 is really good when you consider 5 victories and Newcastle's poor away form on the whole this season. So take the Sunderland win at 3.54. Sunderland have not kept a clean sheet in 7 matches in the Premier League, so expect Newcastle to score at least 1. I think Newcastle have gone 6 without a clean sheet. Absolutely screams both teams to score. Pick a winner and BTTS. I'll take Sunderland. That's a really, really generous 6 for a very likely outcome here. And also, it's a derby. Look at the player to be carded market as well. The tackles are going to be flying in, and if Joelinton is there, and for a change, the referees are watching him, he ain't going to make it through 90.
Let's bet on cards. Could be a really good option. For instance, in this game, I feel Sunderland double chance is pretty safe. Viper is telling us. And Tyson agrees with you in terms of the Sunderland losing a lot of players in the African Cup of Nations. Let's check out our smart bet here. And he's saying also double chance 1x for Sunderland. And as a top tip, and then we have full-time results. Sunderland, although there the level of confidence of the tool is way lower. Let's go to the next one. West Ham, Aston Villa, back-to-back draws for West Ham against Brighton, against Man United, away, 2 positive results, away from home, but now they need the 3 points. They are only 2 points away from Nottingham Forest. The problem is that they are facing the most informed team in the Premier League. 9 wins in the last 10 games. What a performance against Arsenal. How this team can suffer. Tom, is not only about playing football. They also do it. It's the character. It's the belief until the last minute.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that it's been a fantastic run for Aston Villa, though I would say the fixtures before the Arsenal game were quite kind to give this extended run. Plus, you've got to throw in a few sort of European games to extend that run as well. And they can drop a clanger, Villa, as well. So it's just worth a moment of caution on them. I mean, let's talk about West Ham, who should have won last week. And if it wasn't for the referees not understanding dangerous play or handball, they would have beaten Brighton, playing in a very Nuno way. Though it's worth noting that I do think Nuno is quite defensive and they play low block. When they go into the super, ultra, mega low block, they have been conceding goals. This is not Nottingham Forest, and I think Nuno might need to learn that lesson, that 𝗵𝗏𝗏, 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀 are not Murillo and Milenkovic from last season, and it's costing West Ham. The more defensive changes he's made towards games, West Ham have been conceding late goals, and it has cost them. But 1 defeat in 6, pretty impressive. It's 2 wins in that time, which is a problem. And as you say, they need wins now. West Ham need to start winning games and winning games immediately. And are they favourites to win this game? No. However, Leeds were able to beat Chelsea and Forest were able to beat Liverpool, and that's why they're above them. They've got to get points against teams now they don't expect to get points against. And I do think 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗏 has looked better since moving to the other side, since this coach has come in. I think 𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏's replacing 𝐿𝐭𝐚𝐴's good because 𝐿𝐭𝐚𝐴 is a jerk and useless. I think the midfield has been pretty good with if they can find a combination of Potts, Magassa, and Fernandez, who's been fantastic. That's a hard-working, tenacious midfield 3. and then a front line of Wilson, Somerville, Bowen works. Maybe Paqueta comes in for Somerville. But then again, it's hard to know with Nuno, because as soon as I think I've got a handle on what his team is going to be, he plays Guido Rodriguez at Brighton. So I've absolutely no idea, frankly. I do know whatever formation they play and team they play, they will look to low block it through. In terms of Villa, they can't make many changes, and that could be their downfall. I think it will be in the end. Whether it will be this weekend is something we'll find out. But there's just a very shallow squad here. And we don't know at the moment how tough the Thursday night Europa League game was, of course, off the back of the Arsenal game last weekend. And they can't really change too much. Watkins to Marlon, I think, is a bit of a downgrade. How many minutes can Tielemans get through? How many minutes can Onana get through? If they take the lead in this game, I'd feel quite comfortable that Villa can go on to win it. But if they don't score in the opening 20, 30, half an hour of this game, then I think maybe West Ham might be able to get something from it. So, look, I think West Ham are tough to beat, and I think Villa will find this game as tough as the Leeds game a couple of weeks ago. Screams draw at 3.74. I really would not discount West Ham getting something from this match. If you want a couple of scorelines, 0-0 and 1-1 together comes in at 4.5. If you do pick a winner, you do go for Villa and you pick both teams to score. West Ham don't keep clean sheets, but West Ham are able to score as well. Villa win and both teams to score is 4. And then 2-1 either way. If not a draw, it screams 2-1 either way. For the home team, it's 12. For the away team, it's 8.5. But I can't discount the fact that West Ham need the points. And without winning home games, they ain't going to stay up.
Let's see if Aston Villa struggle since they have to play in the Europa League on Thursday, but they are full of confidence, as Viper is telling us. Brentford Leeds is the next one. Brentford is still comfortable, 6 points away from the bottom 3, despite the defeats to Tottenham and to Arsenal. Is 3 defeats in the last 4 games, but at home is where they are comfortable, and they are playing Leeds, 2 points now from relegation. I guess few people believed in getting 4 points at home against Liverpool and Chelsea, but is the strength of Elland Road at the supporters away is going to be more difficult.
Yeah, unquestionably, the away form has been poor. I mean, it's 2 teams here that are really good at home and really bad away. So following the form, you can see where my bet's going to go. I mean, in terms of Brentford, they're an ugly team in lots of ways, a very effective team, which is perfect for a very effective Premier League. I think 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗀𝐻 has been bypassed a lot this season for balls over the top to Thiago, who's gone on to score or gone on to win a penalty more often than not. It's 11 Premier League goals for him. Really impressive return on what is really his debut season, because he was injured for the entirety of the last campaign, so we didn't see him. Over the top with Tara, Shada and Thiago have been fantastic. I think Henderson, Yarmolenko and 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗀𝗀, good trio. Defensively reasonably strong at home, and Keller has made some good saves. So, look, they're a solid team, really good at home, and you've always got to back Brentford to win home games. And away from home, Leeds have struggled. Though it is worth noting that he's gone back to a formation that really worked for him in the Championship with 3 centre-halves in Strike, Biol and Rodon. Are they individually all good enough to be in the Premier League? I don't think so, but as a trio, it's worked really, really well in the last couple of games. And you add that to the work rate of Stark, Ampadu and 𝐸𝐻𝐻. Yes, they are missing Sean Longstaff, who I think was their best midfielder, but the players that have replaced him have been good. And 2 up front has baffled teams. Okafor and 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀 may be likely the front 2, but there's other players they could put in there. Having 2 forwards and 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀 back to somewhere near his best form has baffled teams, and it's meant they've scored goals, and it'll make them a dangerous opponent for Brentford at the weekend. Plus, with a bit of wind in their sails, you never quite know. But on form, one of the best teams at home and one of the worst teams away. You have to go for the home win at 2.07. And I'm struggling again to see goal scorers at Leeds away from home. Brentford very strong at home defensively. Brentford win to 0, 3.5. And as ever with Brentford, pick Thiago to score, because they'll probably get a penalty and he will take it and he will score it.
And for Monday, we have Man United, always playing on Monday. Man United, Bournemouth, quietly, but they are 6 in the standings, only 1 point away from Crystal Palace, really close to the Champions League spots, even if they didn't beat West Ham or Everton, for instance, in the last 2 home games. Now they are massive favorites to beat Bournemouth, winless in the last 6. Uy, Tom, this is the classic game where Man United again fall.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not that high on Man United, right? So I do get your point that I think when Casemiro is fit for 50 minutes, they look really good. When Casemiro is not fit for the rest of the game and they've got to take him off, they struggle. Everyone who replaces him, 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀, 𝗵𝗏, 𝗰𝗏ever, they aren't as good as Casemiro, who once upon a time was the best in his position in the world at Real Madrid, right? So, like, that's the quality of player they have, and it makes a difference when he's there. But the downgrade from him is massive. And if they're not winning the game at that point, things can become a struggle for Manchester United. Defensively, too, you know, West Ham could have beaten them a couple of weeks ago, despite being really defensive. Palace could have beaten them. Everton did beat them. Defensively, 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, Mazraoui, Shaw, in the absence of de Ligt and the absence of Maguire, it's not a particularly strong back line that they've got. And hopefully de Ligt, I think, might be back for this one. And they need him too, because not a great deal of leadership defensively for United. And offensively too, look, 𝗵𝗏𝗏 and 𝐿𝐭𝐤𝐿, I think 𝗵𝗏𝗏's been great. 𝐿𝐭𝐤𝐿's had a bit of a wobble every now and then, injuries too, and Mason Mount playing up front. Look, it's hard working, but it ain't going to get you 3, 4, 5 goals unless you're playing Wolverhampton Wanderers every week, which flattered them, I think, on Monday. So, look, I think they're a good team, Man United. I think they're not a great team for the expenditure, and I think a top half finish is the best that they can sort of hope for. If they want more than that, they've got to win games like this. And Bournemouth, look, I'm not saying Bournemouth are going to get dragged into a relegation scrap here, because I think that they're always going to stay above Leeds and West Ham. And if you do that, you're going to survive in the Premier League this season. But something's going on. Something's definitely going on at Bournemouth at the moment. The run of form has been really, really, really poor. It's 2 points in the last 5 games, 5 defeats this season, 5-5-5 across the 15. Semenyo stopped doing it. Happens all the time when a player gets linked with a move away in January, which we're now expecting to happen. He stopped really contributing on the field a great deal. Defensively, they've been called out a lot. The new defense, we're all like, oh, it's amazing start of the season. I think they've struggled in the last couple of games, last few games, and they're conceding soft goals, which they did well to stop abruptly against Chelsea last week. But before that, Everton, Sunderland, West Ham, Villa, all scoring on them, many of those teams multiple times. So having to be a bit more pragmatic, because I think the manager has read the form, led to a lack of creativity against Chelsea. Game was near unwatchable. And I think you ask so much of Scott and Adams in midfield. Again, the drop-off from those two to their replacements is pretty significant. So you couldn't bet on Bournemouth at this moment in time on the form they have been on. And though I loathe to pick Man United to do anything, I think you have to look at the Man United win here at 1.89. And you've got to look at the form as well for United. In each of the last 3, both teams have scored, or at least they have conceded. It's a similar story for Bournemouth before Chelsea as well. Lots of concessions in recent times. So both teams to score feels like a gimme in this game. Add that to a Man U win, 3.25. But also don't discount the draw, which I'd go for if Man United throw in a clanger, go 1-0 down, and struggle to score for 80 minutes. A game we've all seen many times over.
I see the draw, to be honest. Also, Tyson, I can bet on Man United, Viper and Viper. Well, Tom, this is it. Match day 16. Now, Christmas time starts in the Premier League. And remember, there is a good chance for you to make money since Premier League is not stopping for Christmas. We have our Premier League tipster competition going on. We have our monthly, yearly, but especially the Premier League one is a really good one. And of course, we have Rivals, where you can create your own tipster competition. Well, Tom, you were spot on in the Champions League. Also, Ronan, it's a good couple, this one, the Irish-British couple. Everyone is talking about you guys in the internet. I can see people chatting around. Tom, tell me your safe bet.
I don't know what to say about that. My safe bet for this weekend is Arsenal. Arsenal against Wolverhampton Wanderers, one of the worst teams in Premier League history. It's an easy Gunners win.
1.16. Come on, Tom. You are playing really safe this week.
I mean, you did ask me for a safe bet, did you not? Yeah. Is that not what you wanted?
It is. It is. And the ACCA?
Arsenal in it, obviously. I'm throwing in Brentford because their home form against Leeds, terrible away form. And I think Fulham go to Burnley and win. I'm just kind of betting on teams to beat Burnley every week at the moment in these ACCAs. 4.36 for 3 quite likely wins is pretty generous.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. See you next week. Bye-bye.